Oh, hey guys. Fancy meeting you here on this surprise spy stream. And the reason that we are gathered here for spy stream, which I think should really be a regular thing, so I think I really should find more ways to stream stuff like this, is that I don't exactly remember how this happened, but I got invited to this here webinar, Confronting the Rise of School Board Disruptions. And you can tell just from the language and the people involved in this event that these are people that are from a left. This is from Indivisible, it's a leftist group that they're a little perturbed that people they don't like are getting involved in school boards. And so I think one of my viewers or supporters sent me this link. Thank you to whoever sent me this link. And I think I signed up for this webinar a while ago and I just forgot about it. And then I got the Zoom link for it the other day. I was like, well, what better thing to do than stream their Zoom link or their Zoom meeting live on my channel? So that's what we're going to be doing here tonight. I have the Zoom. They haven't let me in yet. But when they do, I will let you guys know. And we will be streaming spy stream tonight. We will be spying on the enemies. We're basically going behind enemy lines is what's happening tonight. To see what they're saying in real time, to make sure, because it is important that we know what they're saying, so that gives us in the best possible position to fight back. Naruto says, Carlin, in a couple of weeks, the 6-part training I showed you a couple months ago is starting. Excellent, Naruto. Where they discuss why math is homophobic. I will be looking forward to that. Now, guys, just a few notes. So I'm not going to be doing commentary on the stream. What I will be doing is allowing the stream to play, and if I have a comment, I'm going to chat it in and then display it on the stream. And the same kind of goes for you guys. So if you send in a super chat, of course, all of your super chats support the channel and support the work I'm doing, which I greatly appreciate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the super chat on the screen. I'm not going to read it out loud because we're spies. It's going to be quiet. Okay? Like I want to hear as much of what they're saying as possible. So that's how we're going to work this. This is not going to be a stream where I'm talking. I will be chatting in with you guys, and you're welcome to chat in comments too. And even if you chat in a funny comment or something that really resonates, I might show your comment on the screen as well, even if it's not a super chat. But I will absolutely 100% show every single super chat that gets chatted in, and then the rest is kind of like at my discretion. So guys, if you're on board with the idea of spy stream, make sure you mount that like button. Make sure you subscribe to my channel as well. I was just looking at my YouTube stats, and YouTube apparently doesn't serve my videos to anyone who's not subscribed to my channel, which is really nice. 90% of the people who watch my videos are subscribed to my channel. That's how bad it is. 90%. That used to be something like 30%. That was 30% back in the day. Now it's 90%. So if you want to get my videos, make sure you are subscribed. I post content on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. I do live streams on all those days, Sunday through Thursday on the channel. Then on Fridays, we go over to my second channel, Actively Unwoke, for Happy Hour. Tomorrow, we're doing an early edition of Happy Hour on Actively Unwoke. This is youtube.com/Actively Unwoke. We're going to be watching this Equity and Curriculum schools, Equity and Curriculum in Philadelphia schools. This just got uploaded to YouTube today. So we're going to be watching that tomorrow at 2 p.m. Normally it's at 5. Tomorrow it's going to be at 2 because I have an obligation tomorrow night, so I can't do it later. So, and then on Saturdays I rest. But guys, also relevant to our discussion today, if you have not heard, I have written a book. And that book is coming out in April, but you can pre-order that book now. That book is called Actively Unwoke. You can go over to activelyunwoke.com for pre-order. You can pre-order it on Amazon, or there are all sorts of non-Amazon options too, like Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, or like all the different options that you need. The hardcover is available for pre-order right now. The Kindle will be coming, I think they told me, next week. And special update from the publisher, you will be able to order an autographed copy of the book. They're just working it out with a website called Premier Collectibles right now. So you guys are going to be able to go on that website and order a specific autographed copy. And what they're going to do is they're going to send me book plates. I'm going to sign them and send them back, and they're going to put them in the books. I'm going to number those book plates. Wouldn't it be cool for you guys to get like the #1 autographed copy book of Actively Unwoke? I think that'd be pretty cool. But that is coming. But for right now, just make sure you're on Actively Unwoke if you want some stuff to do. I have this live events section. I'm going to be giving a free webinar next week about basically an intro version of critical race theory, what people need to know, and like really like showing some examples, just really intro level stuff. This is great to share with your friends and family who might be concerned about this stuff but don't really know what it is. So that's all on Actively Unwoke. I've got all sorts of streams coming up and webinars and things that you can check out. But of course, if you really want to support the work I'm doing, I always try to shill for my locals community, because my locals community is the best locals community in all of locals. You'll never convince me otherwise. They are the best. We do 2 weekly Zoom calls. We do craft and bitches. We call them bitchcraft. We do book clubs. We're starting an unwoke army of activists where we're going to mastermind different unwoke ways to fight back against all this woke insanity in our lives. And you can get in on that action for, well, technically you can do it for free. You can join my locals for free at kb.locals.com, see what's going on in the community, see if it's a place that is a good fit for you. And if you decide that it is, you can become a supporter at $5 a month. You can do it at $50 a year, which gives you 2 months of free, or you can make a one-time gift. I appreciate all the generous support of my locals, and thank you guys for allowing me to do things like Spy Stream. I just like Spy Stream. Like now what we have to do in my locals, because this will be something the Unwoke Army does. Now what we have to do is find different presentations like this that we can do Spy Stream for. Just because I want to say Spy Stream as much as possible, and I want to maybe make an interesting graphic that's a Spy Stream and be like, and maybe I don't know what that graphic is. I'm sure some of you guys have ideas. Because this is fun. It's like, this is fun. This is like if we were all, able to go out into the real world and, converse with our enemies in real life. Except now we get to watch them from the safety of our own home. It's pretty great. But guys, for real, this is serious, because this is going to tell us what the enemy's saying. I mean, we're going to see it live. We're going to see it live on my channel unless they kick me out of the Zoom, which they very well might. But I did register under I have a secret alias that I register for these things under. I'm not going to tell you guys the name, but the name I use to register for these things is like, she's the worst SJW I ever met in my life. She's like awful, awful woman. I met her a long time ago, and she was always an SJW. And it was just like, so now I use her name to register for things. I really do hope that the sound works tonight. I did a test with my locals community members earlier. I think it'll work. But we're going to cross our fingers. We're going to cross our fingers and our toes that the sound is going to work. Naruto says Spy Stream needs a theme song. You know, Naruto, I just set this up like 45 minutes ago. I didn't have time to write a theme song. All right, let me retweet out again. Let's get as many people, guys. Let's get as many people for Spy Stream as we can. Spy Stream is live. Join us for a look behind enemy lines. Guys, just so you know, I am on Twitter at Dr. Carlin B. I am also on Gitter, which I prefer eminently over Twitter. On Gitter, I'm just Carlin, just my first name. It's a little bit more informal. That's okay. I actually do prefer just going by my first. I don't like, I don't require anyone to call me doctor or anything. I just put Dr. Carlin B on Twitter because I didn't know what else to put for my handle at that particular moment. Then people took it seriously. I only require people to call me doctor when they piss me off, just so you guys know. If you ever piss me off, I'm going to say something like, that's Dr. Borisenko to you. But that's it. All right. The stream is supposed to go live at 8 p.m., so we've got about 6 minutes. Yeah, we could do Secret Agent Man as a theme. I wonder if StreamYard has any good theme songs we can use. I don't think so. Maybe Night Driving. Let's try Night Driving. Spy song. Not a good spy song at all. Oh, wow. Well, Mission Impossible. Yeah, we could do Mission Impossible. Pink Panther. Carl, that is a very good suggestion. I don't know. We'll work on a theme song and an intro and all that stuff for Spy Stream. But what we need to do is make sure we know more of these webinars. So guys, if you know of these webinars, please send them to me. You can actually do it on Actively Unwoke. Hang on. So if you have stuff you want to send me on Actively Unwoke, go to see this big black contact button up here in the corner. Click on that. That's going to take you to a fancy and purple contact form in which you can send me stuff. Okay? So if you see stuff like this, if you come across stuff like this, send it to me. We'll do Spy Stream. This has got to be a team effort. I can't find all the leftist webinars myself. But all of us together can find the leftist webinars, which is pretty great. Doesn't my book look awesome? I'm sorry. I'm going to fangirl over my own book. I love the design my publisher came up with. One of my supporters has offered to make the eye blink and do a little fun animation on it. I'm really psyched about that. They did such a good job. I'm really proud of this book. I read the intro to my locals like a week ago. If you're interested in the intro for my book to hear me read it, there's a video in my locals that I did an exclusive live stream there where I read the introduction, and my locals seem to like it. I'm making a video of me reading the introduction that's going to be a little fancy just to do, marketing. The introduction to the book is called "You Are Not a Racist." I think the point is pretty clear. Yeah, I think that I think you're right. I think this should be fun and interesting and possibly horrifying. All right, guys, if you've just joined Spy Stream, we are waiting for the Zoom to come up. It should be up very, very soon. As a reminder, once this starts, I will not be speaking anymore. I will be typing in and displaying my comments on the stream. Okay? I will display all super chats on the stream. So if you want your comment displayed on the stream, for sure, send in a super chat. I really appreciate the support. It really helps me out. If I see something funny that you say in the chat, even if it's not a super chat, I might use my discretion as the owner of the channel to display that comment. But we're not going to be talking. I'm not going to be doing commentary. I actually want to listen to what they have to say. I might be knitting. But we can talk about what they said afterwards, but I'm not going to be talking during the stream. I just want to manage expectations for everyone. Who's excited? Who's excited for Spy Stream? I'm pretty psyched. I want to see what they have to say. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Hopefully they can't require me to have my camera on. I'm just going to say my camera's broken if they try to. Brooks is psyched. Guys, mount that like button for Spy Stream. Mount that like button for me. We do not smash the like button on this channel. Only like former fucking Abercrombie models with man buns smash the like button. We mount the like button on this channel. I'm going to knit while we're doing this too. I'm working on a cowl. I'm just doing these stripes right now with this hot pink and this kind of like those two colors. I love the pink. The pink is so good. This is Ching Fiber Dashing Sassy. It's very soft. You can get it at Stephen and Penelope, I think, exclusively. And I'm waiting for them to get some more of this pink in so I can buy some more. All right. I'm just waiting for the webinar to start. I'm just killing time. If there's anything you guys want to talk about or any questions you have, please feel free to chat them in. Well, Carl, we can chat. We're going to be chatting. We're going to be making fun. Guys, just because we aren't talking doesn't mean we can't make fun of it in the chat. That is what the chat is for. That is the whole purpose. So we have to improvise. We have to improvise. We gotta be covert for Spy Stream. Come on. They still haven't started this damn webinar yet. Come on, webinar. Come on. I know you can do it, webinar. I wonder if I can share it already. So you guys can see. No, not yet. Have to wait for the Zoom to come up. Justin, don't jinx my stream. Activate incognito mode. Absolutely. We have our previous spy stream was for Democrats in New Hampshire who were talking smack about free staters. Democrats are always late. Always late. I just want to hear what they have to say. We're not going to be disruptive to their stream or anything. They better let me into the stream. I mean, I'm waiting for it to start right now. But like, we're not going to be disruptive on their stream. I'm going to let them say whatever they want to say. We're just going to broadcast it live on the internet so everyone can see what they're going to say. Not even being incognito about it. I post about it on Twitter. This is what happens when you invite me to things. I actually sometimes show up. Still says, please wait. The webinar will begin soon. So it is webinar version, which means, you know, I probably won't have to have my camera on, which is good. I mean, if you're going to post stuff that you're doing, like, I have no problem with people broadcasting anything. Like, any of those webinars I'm doing on Actively Unwoke, I have no problem with people broadcasting any of those. Last spy stream that we decided to do, they never sent us the Zoom link. They refused. They still had their little presentation, but they weeded out their attendees. Where do you find, someone sent this to me, I think. No, Justin, this isn't a Granite State Progress thing. It's a leftist group out of Illinois. So it's not a New Hampshire thing. Sorry. I'm waiting for it to start. Like, I think they're just running late. Maybe they don't know how to tell time. You know, being on time is white supremacy. So I'm sure what they're doing is just they're trying not to center whiteness in this discussion. They're making sure they're not centering whiteness, because if they were on time, that would be a clear instance of white supremacy. No, the webinar link is not incorrect. I think they're just running late. I have like 17 of these links. They've sent them to me. Yeah, fantastic, Dan. You are welcome to hunt for webinars with me. Let me check my email real quick. Let me check my email. Yeah, I got a reminder about it. Here, let me click this link to join. Here, I'm going to X out of this, and I'm going to try to join again. Just to be sure, I have the latest and greatest link that I was emailed an hour ago.
Recording in progress.
Oh. Shit. It's started. Hang on. I'm going to get it for you guys. Hang on. Screen share. Yes. Got it. Okay, they're not saying anything yet. I think I joined right when they started it. Let me know if you guys can hear the sound. They're not saying anything yet. Look, Social Justice Alliance.
Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. This event is a webinar. So if you're an attendee, the host and the panelists can't see and hear you, but you can ask a question using the Q&A interface.
Sweet, sounds working.
This webinar
yes,
will be recorded and
OT,
live
apparently I
streamed
can do
on
commentary.
Indivisible Illinois' Facebook page. The recording will be
it'll also be
available in
streamed on
English and in
YouTube, dear.
Spanish after the event, along with the slides. I'm Lenny Minna-Hoppenworth, co-chair of Indivisible
I am
Illinois.
going to try to be quiet.
Welcome to Confronting the Rise of School Board Disruptions. I'll go over some logistics now before the main program gets started. First, this program will be interpreted simultaneously in Spanish. Go to the interpretation button and select Spanish. Please ask questions as we go along with the Q&A interface. We're hoping to cover the majority of these questions along during the program with that interface, and we'll do a few live questions at the end. If you have unanswered questions at the end of the program, please reach out by email to Illinois Families for Public Schools at info@ilfps.org or Indivisible Illinois at general@indivisibleil.com. We'll start this webinar recording and live stream right now. And in a moment, you'll hear from Cassie Cresswell, Director of Illinois Families for Public Schools. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Good evening, everyone. We have one quick tech thing to do. We're also going to record the Spanish. We have that started, and also can we give permission to Jen to record the Spanish audio? And then we'll have Irene give instructions in Spanish as well.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
It's not in Spanish. Don't worry. It's not in Spanish. It's in English. They're just translating into Spanish.
Okay. Irene, do you want to come onto the English channel and give instructions as well? If you can switch. Okay. So I think we are good to go now. Okay. So I will start with the introductions and main program. So welcome and good evening. I'm Cassie Cresswell, the Director of Illinois Families for Public Schools. We're really thrilled to have people from all over the state on the call tonight. Earlier in the week, we counted more than 90 cities and towns represented. So people are here to learn more about what's been happening around the country and also across Illinois with attacks on school boards and educators. Most importantly, we'll be hearing about what concrete steps we can take together in our communities to connect with others and push back. The planning for this event has been a collaboration between Illinois Families for Public Schools, Indivisible Illinois, and the Social Justice of Indivisible Illinois. In addition, we are really grateful for the array of organizations that are co-sponsoring this event. We're just super excited to have this just broad reach around the state. And, you know, we have organizations here representing parents, teachers, lawyers, advocates, organizers, voters, and protecting our public schools to serve all our state's children and protecting our locally elected democratic governance bodies that run them will require a broad and intersectional coalition. And I think this event is important, not just for the information we're sharing, but that we're beginning to build that coalition. Before we get started with our speakers, we just wanted to put a couple poll questions out there. And so you can see who is here tonight with you. Let's see here, I think I can run this. I'm not sure how to make it so you can all see it. Let's see here. Okay, so that should be popping up on your screen. And we're asking, what's your role? Where do you live? A little typo in there. And basically, what are the issues that have come up with disinformation in your school board meetings, if any? And let us know. Give you a second here to answer. Not sure how long I should let everyone. We're still gaining on participants here, so we'll let everyone keep on answering. And while we're waiting for answers to come in, before we get started with our first speaker, I just wanted to point out a couple stats that I think are really heartening, and that people should take away from this event. That, you know, there's been this coordinated effort around the country for the last year to weaponize public schools addressing issues of gender, ethnicity, and race, and also public schools using COVID mitigation measures. But, you know, the stats are that actually the majority of people polled in our country actually are on the side of factual information and COVID mitigation. So there was a new study out from UCLA that talks about basically this weaponizing and this anti-CRT campaign. And there's been dozens of bills around the country that have been introduced on things like, banning critical race theory discussions, et cetera. But, and like, to the point that a third of all K-12 students in the United States are in a district where there have been local actions along these lines. But the truth is that recent polls show that the majority of Americans agree that students should learn in schools about race and racism. And this is similar to what we're seeing with respect to COVID mitigation measures. Polling shows that a majority of Americans support mask mandates. In December, that was around 69% supporting businesses requiring masks. And that was, barely changed from August earlier. And so I think we need to keep those numbers in mind as we talk about some of these attacks and know that it's not the majority, or even, it's not like a half and half thing, but it is a very vocal minority, and it takes a lot of organizing on the part of all of us to push back on things like this. So we can end our poll now and look at some of these results. Looks like we have about 37% of people on the call are parents, 14% said teachers, and there's overlap in those things. And 41% said community public ed supporters. 21 people said that they were school board members. For where people lived, a quarter of people selected Northern Illinois, about 44% said Chicago suburbs, 12% said Chicago, another 12 were outside Illinois, and then some smaller percentages in Southern and Central Illinois. So gives us a good idea of the array here. Okay, so we'll go on to our first speaker now. Well, first I'll do the little, so you know the order of events here. We have this welcome. Our first speaker is going to be Jim Mcgrath, kind of giving you a little overview of school board disruptions in Illinois. Then we have a panel of 4 speakers. We'll talk about action steps after that. And then we'll also have some parent organizing perspective at the end, and cover some Q&A at the end as well. Okay, so I will introduce our first speaker now. It's Jim Mcgrath. He volunteers with NWSOFA Indivisible and the Social Justice Alliance of Indivisible Illinois. And he's been sharing information about school board disruptions and disinformation on a monthly basis since last summer. Jim will cover some basic background on what's been happening in Illinois and why. Thank
you, Cassie. Okay, so let's get started. So we'll just hit on a couple of high points here. What are creating all these disruptions in school boards? And I want to make a point of there's disinformation and there's misinformation. We're going to talk about the disinformation that is being spread. Misinformation is just a mistake that somebody makes. So we are focused on disinformation. So there's mask mandates that people are upset about, vaccine mandates, there's critical race theory, which is beyond critical race theory, LGBTQ, social distancing, COVID quarantines. What these are actually dog whistle issues. Now, some of the parents who are talking to school boards really believe that these are their primary issues, but in the long term, what these are issues just to get the base of parents involved. So next slide, Cassie. So again, a little bit of detail, what are the issues? And we'll use CRT as an example here. And as you just read the last sentence here, the right, and this is very difficult to be a nonpartisan presentation because all of this issues are coming from well-funded groups on the right. So apologize for that, but that's where this is coming from. So the right is resorted to its usual dog whistle strategy of distraction and division. So as I mentioned before, those are dog whistle issues. Most recently latched onto this critical race theory, which has actually been created by a member of the Manhattan Institute. And he's attached everything he can to critical race theory. And critical race theory, as we know, there isn't a grade school or high school that actually teaching critical race theory. It's a college level course. Now, with political correctness in the 1990s or cancel culture, they've made school and college campuses a primary battleground for stoking fears about what and how we teach our kids. So, and those fears are fears of losing the white privilege, which is why we're holding this seminar tonight. Next slide, Casey. Okay, so words to watch for. These words have been co-opted by these groups that we'll talk about in a little bit. But is patriot or patriotism? If you recall, everybody that participated in the January 6th insurrection was referred to by the groups that participated as a patriot. So you got to be careful with these words. Liberty, that's not liberty as we all think about it, is their definition of liberty. Same thing with freedom. Patriotic education, that is something that is typically seen in authoritarian countries. But that's something that some of these groups are pushing. And critical race theory, again, indoctrination. I became interested in studying this because I was visiting school boards in various areas and I saw indoctrination being talked about in all of these different school boards. So I realized this isn't a local issue. It's being promulgated by national well-funded groups. Intimidation, harassment, two nice words for bullying, which is what this is. And then parental rights or choice. Next slide. So here's how they're using the word indoctrination. This was a sign in Leesburg, Virginia, but education, not indoctrination. That's what I was seeing on signs all the way up into College of Lake County and Palatine, Barrington, school boards all around the Northern Illinois area. Next slide. So is it happening here in Illinois? Now we're using Illinois. I realize there's a lot of people that are from outside of Illinois that are on this, but I've got some examples from Illinois. The first one is in Elmhurst, December 2021, just happened. The reason that his microphone was taken away was he would not give the microphone up at the end of his allotted time frame. Okay, anti-mask, that's Lyon Township, LT Edge. Is Lyon Township High School. They accused the board of trying to shut us up. And that's not the case. When you speak at a school board meeting, you have a limited amount of time. That's not trying to shut anybody up. That's the way the school boards work. Disruption at a Unity High School meeting in Mendon, Illinois. The man was so disruptive, he was taken out of the meeting and arrested. Another Lyons Township example, they're calling Black Lives Matter a Marxist movement, which we know it is not. What's going on, Cassie? Cassie, can we get back to the presentation?
Yeah, sorry, I clicked in the spot on the link, and now that is my thing. Let me stop it and start it. Stop share. And come on, thing. Sorry, everybody.
Okay, can you make it full screen?
Yeah. Without it freaking out.
There we go. Okay, so here's a bunch of examples across different school boards in Northern Illinois. And we'll talk about a little bit more about this Glen Ellen Elementary School students. I've got a photograph of what's going on there. This Barrington, I attended that school board meeting, 60 speakers. It went on for 5 hours. And then this last one is at Taft High School, the principal realized that there was a group trying to start this Turning Point USA. He looked into it and decided that they do not value, that their values don't coordinate with the school's values. So he refused to let them organize at his high school. So next page. So this is what's going on in Glen Ellen at this Forest Glen school. And this is a grade school, elementary school. As kids were walking to school with their masks, parents were lining the sidewalks and streets and harassing the kids. And again, I will say harassment is a nice word for bullying. And bullying is not acceptable at any level. Next slide. So.
Sorry about that. Damn, it clicks to the wrong picture. Great.
So I'm just going to go through quickly. So here's some of the national organizations that are we're dealing with. This first one is American Legislative Exchange Council, also called ALEC. They write legislation that is then given to legislators in various different state legislators. If you're wondering why some of these, like voter suppression laws, are similar in different states, it's because they are. They come from this organization. So here's a number of groups that, and I'm going to kind of skip to the bottom down here. Turning Point or No Left Turn in Education. They're fighting against lessons in systemic racism. All we are asking for is a just a true accounting of our history, a non-sanitized version. Moms for Liberty, they are even starting, and by the way, Turning Point USA does the same thing, a list of teachers and professors that they don't like. If you don't like what somebody says, they are creating a list, which is very scary in my opinion. So next page. So here's what's happening. What they're doing is they use the media to drum up a culture war. That's one of the things that critical race theory is being used for, or gender issues. Then they win elections by stoking voter fears. That's what happened in Virginia. If you remember, that was a lot of that was about critical race theory, which I didn't see one interview of a voter in Virginia who could explain what critical race theory was, but they knew they didn't want it, even though it wasn't being taught. So it flipped the election. Then they frame attempts to update the curricula as a radical attack on American values. American values is interpreted to be white privilege. That's what they mean by that. And then demand vouchers for privately managed charter schools. What they want to do is defund the public schools. And once they do that, They take the money out of our public schools. The public schools can't afford the teachers that they need, and that becomes obviously a big problem. And then they support politicians who support education cuts, charter schools, and voucher schemes, which we don't want. So, okay, next page, Cassie. So bottom line is the organizations that we saw, and this is just some of them. For example, there's one group that funds organizations throughout the United States. One group looked at just 28 of the organizations that one funding group funded. Just 28 of the total that they funded. So they want to maintain the sanitized version of American history. Want to energize their base of voters for the upcoming election. Not just the school board election that's coming up in Illinois in April of 2023, but for this coming election. So what can we do? Joyce is going to have a list of actions that there's something that everybody can do on her list. So it's quite extensive. Please stay on and listen to that list that Joyce has. So one more click, Cassie. The last, never mind. The last click was, just remember that an energized minority can overcome a complacent majority. So we can't be a complacent majority if we think what we believe is what we want to do. So please listen to what Joyce has to say, and let's get active. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim. Our next part of the program is going to be our panelists. I'll introduce them one at a time, and we'll hear from each one of them. The first one is we're going to hear from 4 speakers taking sort of a national, a state, a district, and then more of a school classroom perspective on these attacks, what's happening, why it's happening, and also why it's really important for the good of our public schools and public school students to push back. So first is Jennifer Berkshire, an author and journalist. Most recently, she's been the co-author with education historian Jack Schneider of A Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door, which is a book examining the push to privatize the US K-12 school system. Jennifer and Jack can be heard on the education podcast, Have You Heard? And Jennifer has been monitoring and reporting on the attacks on school boards, school COVID safety, and curriculum for many months, and that's what we will hear from her tonight. So take it away, Jeff and Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me. I am coming to you from Massachusetts, where we are awaiting what they're now saying is the storm of the century. They're saying that Boston could have something like 30 inches. But I'm originally from Illinois. I grew up down the road in Springfield, and my sister is a teacher in Southern Illinois. And I should say that I'm also a proud graduate of Eastern Illinois University. So my job is to paint for you a kind of brief picture of what's happening nationally. And as Cassie mentioned, I am a journalist and I host a podcast. And that means that I'm fortunate enough to get to talk to people all over the country who are experiencing exactly what Jim just described. And also I get to, come away with some heartening examples where I think people are doing a really good job of pushing back in ways that are effective. So first of all, I know that your focus is primarily on school board disruptions, but I think it's really important that we understand the broader context of what's happening here. As Cassie mentioned in her introductory remarks, something like a third of the students in the United States are now attending schools in districts that are covered by these education gag orders, which is really the only way to describe them. These are these limits on discussions of racism and race in the classroom that we started to see being swiftly enacted last year. So there's good news and some bad news, and I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that we're already seeing in the early month of this, the new legislative session around the country, that the new bills that are being proposed are even more extreme than the initial ones that we saw. They're broader in scope they're being enacted more quickly, and they apply not just to this sort of amorphously described divisive concepts, but increasingly they're focused on things like LGBTQ issues. For example, there's a bill that seems to be hurtling towards the governor's desk in Florida called the Don't Say Gay bill, which would basically ban schools from dealing with any topics having to do with gay or transgender issues, even if, say, students raise the issue in the classroom. You can also imagine what this would mean for gay or lesbian teachers. So we're seeing that there is that the issues are broadening. The punishments in these bills are getting more extreme too. One thing that we're seeing that I think that's really relevant to this discussion is that an increasing number of these bills don't just allow parents to sue schools, school districts, and even teachers, but they encourage them to do that by attaching monetary stakes, by paying for lawyers' fees, by giving some kind of monetary reward if the parents win the case. And we're seeing this kind of language pop up in all sorts of bills. Some of them ban divisive concepts, quote unquote, like we saw last year. But the Florida bill that I just mentioned, that's being labeled the Don't Say Gay bill, also allows for this private right of action that encourages parents to take legal action against these various entities. Now, why does this matter to you? Because what we're seeing is basically there's a law professor at UCLA who I think just summed this up so neatly with the description of, the grievance industrial complex, that basically you don't just empower parent voice, but you encourage parents to translate individual grievances into lawsuits against schools and districts in a way that seems absolutely guaranteed to make the running of schools more and more difficult. And you end up in this situation where the preferences of individual parents translate into loss of learning opportunity for whole groups of students. And I think that's really dangerous. So I mentioned that there was some good news, and there is actually some good news. The flip side of what I've been describing as this kind of growing extremism at the legislative level is turning off more people. As the more extreme these measures get, the more that a sort of a generic protest around parent rights becomes linked to demanding that very specific books be pulled from libraries, for example, the more uncomfortable the public gets with that. Jim mentioned that we've seen a version of this movie before in the 1990s, and that is so true. And I think that's really important for us to recognize. I wrote a story about this late last year, and I was just absolutely astonished to go back and read about what happened in the 1990s, how familiar it felt, and how many of the same names that we're familiar with now popped up then. You probably remember the name Betsy DeVos. We just said goodbye to her. Well, in the 1990s, she headed up an organization that had the goal of enshrining in every state constitution language that would guarantee that parents had the right to direct the education of their children. And it really looked for a while like they were going to win. There was a lot of money behind the cause. As Jim mentioned, this has been a right-wing priority going back decades. But then something really interesting happened. The movement ran out of steam, and it ran out of steam in places like Virginia and Colorado, because what happened was that when the public got to see for themselves what this concept of parent rights would actually mean, not just for schools, but really for all sorts of organizations, for libraries, even video store owners were worried. What if a young person brought home a video that their parents were opposed to? Could they be sued too? And so you saw a cause that seemed unstoppable run out of steam. And I actually think that we're going to see something similar happen in this case. So I mentioned that I have the opportunity to talk to all kinds of parents and teachers around the country. So I've actually seen a number of really heartening examples where people on the ground have translated what Cassie was talking about, which is this majority support for things like addressing the concerns of LGBTQ kids in schools, or, teaching our history in a way that's fair. I've seen examples of groups that have translated concerns about COVID mitigation into making it clear and undeniable that they are, in fact, the majority. And that's turned out to be a really powerful way to lower the volume on some of the loudest voices in the room. So I'm hoping we can talk a little bit more about that in the future. So I think that is pretty much it. There is good news, there is bad news, but I think that we have the potential in this moment to actually build deeper and more powerful coalitions in defense of public education and its invaluable role in democracy. So I know that this is a very difficult topic and that it gets very heated, but we need our public schools and they need us like never before. So let's figure out a way to deepen those coalitions and start tonight. Thanks so much for having me, and I can't wait to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I think having some historical perspective on this is really, really helpful. So next up, we are going to hear from Illinois State Senator Christina Passionacius. She is an elected official. She's representing the northwest side of Chicago in the Illinois General Assembly since December 2020. She's also really has an amazing depth in the education sphere. And she has a broad background in education policy and practice. So prior to the General Assembly, she served on the Illinois State Board of Education, and she was the Associate Vice President of Policy for Erickson Institute here in Chicago. And before that, she was the Director of Education at the Latino Policy Forum. And even before that, she worked at Chicago Public Schools and a community organization here in Chicago and LASE. In a volunteer capacity, she's served on numerous boards, in the education sphere, including the Illinois Early Learning Council, the Illinois State Team of the Build Initiative, the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee of the P20 and Early Learning Councils, and in her own neighborhood, the Logan Square Neighborhood Association. And she co-chaired the nonprofit advocacy group, the Puerto Rican Agenda of Chicago, for 6 years. So she really has a whole breadth of experience in the community and this very extensive knowledge of education policy, and now is building on that in the General Assembly. So Senator, you go ahead.
Thank you for the warm introduction, Cassie, and thank you to all the groups that have spent the time to convene us to have this conversation. As I know, it's not like a one and done, right? This is going to be an ongoing discussion. There has to be significant building and dispelling of I appreciate how Jim explained earlier, the disinformation versus the misinformation. As Cassie had mentioned, I have kind of different hats that I wear, and I've had different experiences that I bring to bear in this work in the General Assembly. First and foremost, I am a graduate of the Chicago Public Schools. I'm a proud graduate. That experience very much informed how I approach education, having gone to what is now considered a selective enrollment school and understanding a lot of the disparities when it comes to our neighborhood schools, which actually then took me to my doctorate degree in educational policy and having a lot of experience hands-on working in the field, both within schools and in collaboration with schools and community-based organizations. But I'm also a parent. And so all these lenses come together in the work that I'm doing in the General Assembly. But specifically, I want to touch on tonight, because I think it's important for folks to understand, especially because this was you know, it kind of caught some headlines around this time last year. But while I was serving on the State Board of Education, we went through a process. When I came on, it was kind of midway through the process of creating what we call the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards. And the idea behind that is to really kind of get at creating some standards for our teacher preparation programs that acknowledged what we had come to better articulate and understand the adverse impact of when we do not have learning spaces that promote critical thinking, that optimize learning, and that ultimately scaffold skill building in a way that is inclusive, in a way that fosters belonging. But ultimately, it avoids what Angela Valenzuela calls subtractive schooling, and that in order for us to be successful in school and to meet all of those kind of quote unquote achievement benchmarks for students that have been historically marginalized, whether it's because of your culture, your skin color, your language, your gender expression, your gender identity and orientation, you have to subtract yourself in order to be successful. And that is a very harmful practice that has been, that has been very much kind of pervasive throughout our education system. So I want to tell you this story about how we came about this, because ultimately what we have to understand when we think about schools is that, or school systems, what we have control over when we are sitting on these on these boards of education. And usually with the State Board of Education, in any school system, there's 5 areas that you have control over, right? It's assessments, it's standards, it's teacher evaluation, it's teacher preparation, and it's curriculum. Curriculum is not what school boards have control over, or at least the State Board of Education doesn't have control over, right? So us as a state board, understanding this truth that we need to shift the way that we prepare teachers to bring them up to speed, to the relevance, to the diversity, to the need to invite young people into their learning process, affirm their identities, and not have to subtract their identities in order to be successful. The idea was that we would then revise and create these teaching standards or these standards for teacher education programs at the university level to really inform course design, course sequencing, and the clinical experiences. This is for individuals who would be pursuing a bachelor's or a master's degree that would also have a professional educator license, a PEL. That is that whole piece that of those 5 components, it's the teacher preparation piece, right? And so these programs would now have to align with these culturally responsive teaching and leading standards. And it's ultimately, I want to kind of like unpack just a touch, what is culturally responsive practice in pedagogy, right? It's the understanding that children don't come to us as empty vessels, but they come to us with assets. They come to us with lived experience, with skills, and with knowledge. And it's our job as educators to partner with them and their families so that they can explore the world, so that we can co-create knowledge. We can co-create spaces that support their ability to advocate for themselves, to find their voice, to use their own voice, but ultimately for us as educators to be self-reflective of our role in their development, and how we can also be self-reflective about the power dynamics that are created in schools and that are reinforced in schools and often have marginalized various groups of our students and have been very harmful and do not lead to the outcomes that we hope, the positive outcomes, right? So really with these teaching and learning standards, this self-reflection process is also an understanding that there are systems of oppression at work. It's very important to acknowledge and understand how they operate in the world beyond the school system, but also within the school system. To ultimately understand as an educator, it is our job to learn from students. It's our job to have meaningful and relevant relationships and to value student feedback. and ultimately honor and enhance student advocacy and ensure that those relationships with the student are also relationships with the family and the community, because that's the context that the young person or the child is coming from. We have to always remember that children and young people learn in the context of relationships, and that they do not exist as independent widgets. They're within an ecosystem that they bring to the schools. And so what was really interesting as we were developing these teaching and learning standards through the rulemaking process at the State Board of Education, a lot of what Jim had referenced was the critique, was that there was this left-wing, powerful group that was coming after education and indoctrinating students with these teaching and leading standards. Well, first of all, there's no indoctrination of students, period. These are standards that are being brought up to the 21st century and the lived experience and reality of the students that are in our classrooms today. And we are trying to equip and prepare educators with tools and with experiences to be able to best meet the demands of students today. And so the idea that, there is some kind of small group masterminding behind the scenes is completely disinformation, because this one was a process that actually began under an administration that was conservative, was the former administration, the previous governor. And the charge was precisely to create these teaching and leading standards. The other piece was to understand that it was a multiple year process that invited multiple voices, experiences, and expertise and geographies across our state and roles. And there was a very deliberate process that was when, as elements of the standards were being developed, there was cross-pollination, there was cross-evaluation, and then it went through a very rigorous public comment process in which then the board would adopt. And so these types of exercises are incredibly important to the nature of our educational system, right? We want to make sure that young people and children have opportunities to develop critical thinking skills. In fact, I would argue that the opposition to this work is actually an indictment on our educational system, and that the opposition is not able to evaluate information and critically triangulate different perspectives and understand the importance of learning accurate history and bringing in multiple voices. So this is really, an exercise, and those standards are ultimately about what we call addition and multiplication, not subtraction and division. But, the chorus gets so loud and the noise gets so loud. And what I can say that's really important moving forward and ways that we can support the efforts is that we get involved and we make sure that we as educators, as parents, as community leaders are at school board meetings, are interfacing with our school districts and the State Board of Education and other actors in this space so that they understand the lived experience that we have and the intention behind these things and involve us in the process. When I was a state board member, I wasn't required to do this, but I would hold virtual town halls every single month. I had 200 people that I met around the state and kept on adding folks in from all corners because I felt very strongly about, even though I was appointed, I needed to hear from the ground. And what I resoundingly heard from the ground from all corners of the state was the importance to center our education in children and young people and to equip them with the skills for the world that they are going to be inheriting. And that doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye and we act like the past didn't happen. It actually means that we jump into that space and we embrace the conflict and the importance of knowing these past harms so we can actually be about creating the solutions to mitigate those past harms. And so I want to just stop right there. And I really am looking forward to the rest of the conversation. And I know there's going to be some very concrete tools and tips that folks can enjoy. But please pay attention when when the State Board of Education particularly puts out surveys or has these open forums, to make sure that our voices that are really trying to center young people in this work, and the fact that we have to stand in truth and reality, even as ugly as the past was. And we need to safeguard that, because that is the core of what education is supposed to do. And that is being an act of freedom and liberation, as Paulo Freire, who is a Brazilian educator, said, that believed in developing critical consciousness as being the goal of education. So I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. I think it's really helpful, especially to connect the response to those culturally responsive teaching and leading standards that were passed last year to the current fights. And I think it's really instructive to see the parallels that are happening in terms of disinformation around things that our schools actually really need. Next up, we are kind of narrowing to the district level. We're going to hear from Nathaniel Rouse. Nathaniel Rouse is the first ever director of Equity, Race, and Cultural Diversity Initiatives at Barrington Community School District 220. Previously, from 2008 to 2019, he was the principal of Oak Park and River Forest High School, and he's now in his 26th year in the education field, and dedicated to transformational leadership, service, and action to eradicate the systemic inhibitors in schools that create uneven outcomes for students based upon race and ability. And so, the rest, take it away.
Thank you so much, Cassie, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful groups of the cadre of groups that have gotten this together and have us here tonight for this very important conversation. I also it's wonderful going after the senator, because one of the things that I think is important to also recognize is the rationale and the why behind the state making the decision that they did to shift to culturally relevant pedagogy. And the actual truth of that is, in 2014, as it relates to the student population in our entire state, that is the year where BIPOC or Black Indigenous people of color, or students of color, Black and Brown students, became the majority in our state. And so as that has happened, we wanted to shift to make sure that we were being responsive to those shifts. And so many districts at the same time are now experiencing some of those shifts as well, which is why Barrington, for example, was a district that created my position. So I want to thank Jim for kind of breaking down a little bit of some of the stuff related to critical race theory and some of the pushback with there. And I just wanted to spend some time talking about this from a district level and some of the work that I'm doing in my district, and hopefully can share some thoughts along the way about perseverance, how we continue to do this work when people are pushing at us, then, the intersection of critical race theory and history, and things of the like. So with that in mind, I also want to say that I'm a proud veteran. I check a lot of boxes. I've been in education for 26 years. I tell people I know just enough to be dangerous from my previous experiences. And again, I'm a veteran. So when people talk about patriotism, when people talk about the flag, when people talk about what that means, it certainly means something to me. So I always make sure that people know that as I have these conversations, and when people think that the perception of the work that we have is something that's indoctrinating, un-American, or patriotic, I'm more patriotic than some people think. So with that being said, in the spirit of getting more bees with honey, the work that I do really is twofold. I firmly believe in order to make this work, this equity work, transformational in a homogeneous school district such as mine, it's important for me to also provide educational awareness and be transparent with our community. And what I mean by that is, I've spent time getting out in our community, talking about equity, providing opportunities for folks to hear what it is truthfully that we're really doing versus some of the things that are catching the national media attention. And so an example of that was earlier this year in September. Normally in my role as a district administrator, I usually do a report in the fall and a report in the spring. And we moved that report up to September, purposely and strategically this year, so that, you know, I could kind of address some of the groundswell bubblings that were happening around the state and around the country relative to critical race theory. And I spent more time talking about what we were really doing and making sure that people knew that that wasn't what we're doing, yet at the same time understand that there are some connectivities. I want to, speaking of critical race theory, one of the things I want to talk about is Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, Derek Bell, and Richard Delgado. Those three individuals are some of the founders, if you will, and authors of what we know to be critical race theory. And they began actually having these conversations in the 60s and 70s. Higher level thinking in, you know, in colleges and universities, really focusing on policies and procedures. And so, you know, one of the things that in particular that's germane to this discussion that Dr. Crenshaw talks about is that there's these three R's mentality. There is something that happens with race, then there's this reform that happens, and then after that there's this retreating, if you will. And so as I think about that and the racial reckoning that happened 2 years ago, here we are again, you know, removed from some of the most significant protests that the world has ever seen. Their racial reckoning appeared to be alive and well, right? We even had the commissioner of the National Football League in response to some of his players talking about doing a public service announcement of all things, saying that he believed that Black Lives Matter. You know, corporations followed suit, and district equity and inclusion became the thing, right? And again, my position that I'm afforded the opportunity to talk to you tonight about was born during that time. You know, but what she talks about is, and again, this has been, as Jennifer's alluded to here, this has been historical. History kind of repeats itself. And we've seen these things happen before. It seems like whether it was the civil rights movement, it seems like whether it was integration of schools, the rebellion itself against slavery, there's always been this regression to the means, if you will, that she talks about. There becomes this grievance mixed with fear and righteous indignation, she says, that turns into a toxic hysteria that stays under the surface, right? Until some idea is identified or some group of people can be shown as the people that are responsible, and the repression against the very group of ideas happen. And so as we think about that, and we think about how critical race theory and Chris Rufo is the individual actually that Jim was referring to earlier that works for the Manhattan Institute. Chris Rufo was an individual that really introduced CRT to the world as we know it. And Dr. Crenshaw was fascinated because, again, to be honest, this similar kind of approach of attacking CRT actually happened in the 90s, believe it or not. And it happened in the 90s in 1995, actually, after the verdict of the O.J. Simpson trial. And what they tried to say at the time was one of the reasons that O.J. Simpson was actually proven to be not guilty was actually because of this critical race theory. Now, at the time, there wasn't a social media beast that we have right now. So there wasn't really the legs to really push this theory into the mainstream. However, there were articles that were written that kind of really spoke to this notion of an attempt to blame critical race theory, if you will, as this hysteria and why O.J. Simpson was guilty. So she thought that was fascinating, and we found it fascinating that that became the new boogeyman to address these feelings that individuals had as it relates to the racial reckoning that took place just 2 years ago. You know, so now here we are talking about voting rights again, you know, just like we did in the 60s. I mean, if you think about it and connect some of the dots, we've actually had more challenges to voting rights in 2022 than we did after the civil rights movement in 1964. So it's just fascinating to see how history repeats itself, which is something that we're trying to prevent, right? Because when we do the same things over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. I can also just remember, you know, just matter of factly, as relates to slavery, as the abolitionist movement began to take place, you can remember that there were times where people were trying to do what with slaves? They were trying to keep them from reading, to keep them from writing, to keep them out of books. At the time, as a matter of fact, some of the jokes that have been said was that if you wanted to keep something from African Americans, put it in books. Well, that actually comes from back in the days during slave times, the attempt to not allow African Americans to read and write. And it's interesting how that little incident, if you just juxtapose that with what's kind of taking place with this banning of books, I mean, what are we doing to our children? I mean, how can our children be well-rounded and have a true understanding of history if we're not allowing them the opportunity to really explore it? And so I say that to say, my work is focusing on creating a systemic transformation for my district, but I also want to have a transformation in my community. So I really believe in transparency. And so what I try to do is spend as much time as my community in the community trying to talk about our work so that, again, there's no surprises. And then when the bubbles come up, we're positioned a little bit better to support one another. I think a coalition of willing of parents is something that I would really, really encourage anyone that is doing this work. Make sure that you have parents and community members that are supportive of your work. And then again, keep them invested so that, again, as these narratives come to our boards, as individuals continue to come and start challenging this equity work as they've been doing, you also can have counter narratives. You can also have counter stories. What I mean by that is I don't think it needs to be the lived experiences of students of color all the time coming up and talking about the trauma that they have, but it certainly means that we can have white co-conspirators and white allies coming to board meetings and talking about the positivity and the benefits of all students understanding empathy and equity and developing empathy. And why do we need that? Because again, in a homogeneous community such as Barrington, we want our kids to be able to leave Barrington and go and experience the world and have empathy and understanding of diversity so that when they go into the real world, they're able to not be accepting and not tolerate, but understand and have opposed to it being a surprise where we fall back into some of the microaggressions that have continued to happen historically. And so my work is focused on really providing professional development that focuses on race and identity and cultural development and building empathy as it relates to race, student ability levels, cultures, religions, and the like. And so I spend a lot of time talking about that. And so to that end, there's a couple things that I put in the chat. It was unfortunately, they're not hyperlinked for you. I promise when I'm done speaking, I'll give you the hyperlink, but 3 things that I want to talk about are 3 organizations in Illinois that I think are really, really helpful as you think about trying to have some strategic opportunities to provide educational awareness to your communities, as well as allow your parents to be involved. And so the first one is Learn from History. If you go to learnfromhistory.org, it provides a wonderful plethora of information about how to have conversations, frankly, how to be able to navigate difficult conversations with people who maybe think differently. I think part of the problem that we're dealing with also is that we've lost our ability to communicate no matter what side we're on it, and we stick to our guns. And instead of, doing listening to understand, we're listening really to defend. And that's just a tough place to be in. And so we're so divided. And so finding ways to develop empathy so that we can have these conversations is prime. And so I'm spending a lot of time with our leadership doing that. Board of Education members, individuals also need to understand what it means to lead for equity. And so I'm partnering with our Illinois State Board of Education to provide our Board of Education the opportunity to go through experiences themselves so that they can understand the whys. Obviously, we have data that speaks to why we need to do this work, but I also want our Board of Education members to have experiences themselves to help them develop empathy and understand that, again, they can be so powerful in helping us shape the trajectory as we move forward. And so I'm fortunate to be in a community that has a commitment to equity, that is really pushing that commitment to equity. And now it's time for us to do some of that action. Yet at the same time, I think it's really important to stop and make sure that our community, at the very least, has the understanding and awareness of what we're doing so that it's not a surprise. So as I continue to do this work, I want to make sure that I'm also have my community lock and step to continue to do that. That includes our faith communities. I was fortunate this year to be a part of a civic leaders union that took a lot of the very strategic leaders in our school communities and our community, and we partnered together to focus on equity. And I'm hoping that doing things like that will also lend itself to our educational awareness for our parents, as well as educational awareness for our community. So it's not just about the work that's being done in the school. It has to be work that also is happening in your community. Thinking of parent universities and opportunities for parents to really, really get their own understanding so that, again, that misinformation that Jim talked about and is able to be challenged in a way that is factual and allows that opportunity for dialogue. And so we want to make sure that we can do that. as I continue to think about some of the other things, and we talk about this critical race theory and how that has become a challenge in how we teach history. Well, what I try to really focus on is making sure that what we do is truthful. I want to make sure that as we think about, if someone was to ask me what it was that our district was really, really focused on and how we wanted to really address these issues, is that we, as many of our speakers have already said, we want our students, and we want to be an inclusive district. We want to recognize and celebrate our diversity. We want to have a connection to our past, and make sure that connection to our history is truthful. We want to be truthful, and not truthful in a way that we're divisive, but we're truthful in a way that it allows our students to be critical thinkers and recognize that how history time and time again has repeated itself over and over. And if we don't begin to challenge ourselves to do differently, then we'll continue to repeat ourselves. The thing that I am thankful for is having a generation of students that are active, that are ready to talk about these issues that we as adults really frankly struggled with as kids. Well, we haven't really done well, and then as a result of that, we're fearful that sometimes if our kids are given this information, that all of a sudden is going to create this situation where either they feel bad about being white, or they feel guilty for who they are, and that's not what the work is about at all. It's all about building empathy and understanding, so that again, history simply does not repeat itself. And so I spend a lot of time in my world focusing on the actual leadership portions of helping my district understand why it's important for us to do this work, and then again challenging some of those perceptions that are out there that are just misinformation. And fortunately, thus far, I'm happy that this approach has been helpful. But I'm one that really feels that as we do this work, we also have to allow for those conversations for individuals who maybe think differently. I think we can have those conversations in a way where both sides can dialogue. And again, that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, we're going to agree lock and step, but I want people to feel that at the very least, they've had the opportunity to hear from someone that I hope they consider an expert based upon my 26 lived years of experience as an administrator and my 51 years of experience on the planet as a Black man, and how those experiences have influenced and impacted my abilities to do the things that I've had to do. So I'm hoping that we continue to do that work in a way that is inclusive, transparent, and provides opportunities for our community to learn as well. I really think that is so critical as we continue to do this work. One of the other resources I put in the chat there was called Teach Plus from Illinois. And Teach Plus is a group of individuals that really have gotten together and put some information together that really focuses on a design for equity, that focuses on recommendations for recruiting and retaining teachers of color. As I continue to think about this conversation, as I saw some of the questions that maybe have popped up, it was a lot of questions about how we can not just hire individuals of color, but most importantly, retain them as well. And so Teach Plus, again, I'll put this in the link as in the chat as I finish, is give some wonderful tips. And just so that just some of the research that they've included in this 16-page document are some of their findings. And I'll just give you a couple of those as it relates to the experience and the importance of having teachers of color, because you want to mirror the populations of your students. Research has always indicated that students, need to see themselves. I mean, students need to see people that look like them in positions of power, in teaching roles, in administrative roles, so that they know, again, that first of all, they can do that. They can be that type of person. And then more importantly, they also can see individuals that look like them in successful roles. And so we need to do a better job, I think, collectively in targeting teachers of color, so that, again, we can mirror our student population, so that students can see themselves, not just in the curriculum, as our senator has talked about with culturally relevant pedagogy. We want also for them to see some diversity in teaching and administrative roles as well. But some of the findings that they talk about is that teachers of color report a need for specialized supports that take into account the social emotional taxes that kind of take place when, I don't know, being the only individual maybe of a particular color, of a particular race, that's in a room, that's in a district, mind you, that's in a department. We want to make sure that we're honoring that, to make sure that the cultural and the challenges that individual faces, we're there to support them. The other pieces are that teachers of color report needing equitable access. They want to have leadership opportunities. More often than not, in my roles, unfortunately, as I've looked at the demographics of staff, the things that's been challenging to me is always asking the question, geez, here I am in these positions of leadership yet, and challenging myself to try to find these different roles for my students to see teachers and administrators of color. Yet it always seems that the hiring that we do, it seems like it's our custodials, it seems like it's our support staffs. And again, very, very integral people. I don't mean this in the wrong way, but what I'm saying and painting with a broad brush is it's unfortunate that many times the individuals that we do hire of color seem to be those individuals that are in support roles versus those positions of power, versus those roles that have the opportunities to actually teach and learn. So I want to make sure that, again, that Teach Plus is something that we use to help and make sure that we are in a space where we are trying to do as much as we can. In addition to that, the last thing that I put is something that relates to the sustainability of this work. When we think about the rationales as to why, and as the senator talked about a little bit about the role that she played and the wonderful recommendations that have been taking place in the state, there is this equity journey continuum that is now something that our Illinois State Board of Education is requiring of our school boards or school districts. Many of you have heard about Illinois school report cards, and to make a long story short, each school is going to be is actually going to be given a demarcation in particular areas that focus on equity. And I'm saying that to say that just means it's the opportunity for schools to continue to hone in on ways to keep equity on the table. And so I'm happy to see that the state is continually trying to hold districts accountable by providing these metrics in place that speak to where we are as it relates to an equity continuum, and then more importantly, what we're going to do, what actions we're going to take to move the needle to make sure that we have equitable access and opportunities. So with that being said, I'll put a pin in what I have to say. There's so much more that we could talk about, but I look forward to the questions and answers. And again, I want to thank you for this opportunity and look forward to responding to some of the questions that come as we do this a little later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse, and for that overview of especially what districts can really be doing in a concrete way for local school systems. We are now going to hear from a teacher, Julie Harris. She is she's been an educator for 31 years. She has an undergraduate degree in elementary education and a master's degree in special education and educational administration. And she is currently a special education teacher in Tinley Park, CCSD 146. And she's also serving her 10th year as union president for her council. And she's the recording secretary for IFT Local 604. And we are excited to hear from her. Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. I've been asked to speak about what I've been experiencing firsthand regarding disinformation campaigns during school board meetings on the topics of COVID and mask mandates, vaccines, and how critical race theory has become a hot button topic at school board meetings. I think Bill Briggs, president of Local 604, said it best a couple months ago that societal changes are beginning to occur, and many of them are starting at the local school board level right under our noses. Over the course of the last 2 years, I've seen a shift amongst several members of my school board in their disregard for teacher safety when it comes to social distancing protocols in school, as well as wanting to push the envelope to get quarantine and close contact students back into school quicker than recommended by the CDC and IEPH, without much regard to the safety and well-being of our educators. We're living in fear right now as we await the decision regarding mask mandates in schools from the lawsuit residing in Sangamon County. What comes out of that court case will, in my thinking, give control of mask mandates in schools to local school boards. And right now, I have no doubt that my school board would seriously consider to push forward to remove masks in schools at the request of the most vocal members of our community who have been showing up and speaking at our school board meetings. There have been many outspoken community members at our school board meetings as of late, and the theme to their allotted 3 minutes of public comment have consistently been masks, vaccines, and critical race theory. I actually went back over the videos of some of the most recent public comment portions of my school board meetings, and I'd just like to provide you with a snippet of some misinformation or disinformation coming from the public. These are some direct quotes from community members that stood at the lectern during our school board meeting. And I'm going to give you a few of them. Once the herd accepts mandatory vaccinations, it's over. Vaccines are genetically modifying children and sterilizing them for the greater good. Vaccine developers stand to make millions, and many of you, as she points out to the school board members, are investors. Is there a kickback to the school for every vaccine that they give out? Bill Gates said that if we do a good job with vaccinations, then the population can be controlled. Our children and grandchildren are the experimental lab rats for an experimental injection. I can go on, but I think you get the gist, and I'm sure that all of you have actually seen enough appearances like these on social media, as well as at your own local level, spreading this disinformation in a public forum. The next topic dominating my school board meetings has been critical race theory. My story is actually what led me to become a panelist this evening, and I just briefly like to share it with you. As a union officer, one of my responsibilities is to update the Board of Education at their monthly meetings. I often share highlights promoting the wonderful things that the teachers in my district are doing in their classrooms. At the November 2021 school board meeting, I included in my update about a district-wide program that had been launched for our educators. And that program was called the SEED program, which stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. It's a nationwide program that, and I'm going to quote from their website what it is. It partners with communities, organizations, and schools to train leaders to facilitate their peers in conversational communities to drive personal, organizational, and societal change towards social justice. The SEED program prepares teachers to lead year-long school-based seminars on making school climates, curricula, and teaching methods more gender fair and multiculturally equitable. 1 week after announcing the district's participation in the SEED program at that Board of Ed meeting, an email was sent out to literally hundreds of people by a parent in the district stating that the SEED program is actually critical race theory in disguise. The email was addressed to state representatives, multiple area school boards, and to other known disinformation campaign leaders. The writer of the email provided a link to the board meeting and tells them my name and gave them the exact mark time on the video of where to find me reading my statement about the SEED program. He also stated in the email that he was guaranteed by 3 of my board members that CRT would never be taught in our schools, as documented by a conversation he had on his driveway with said 3 board members during their campaigns. He also went on in his email to ask why the district isn't providing literature to students and the community regarding Turning Point USA. And he also asked why NRA and gun safety education isn't offered in our schools. So besides the disturbing nature of his email, he signed his email as Brian Blank, proud deplorable, and domestic terrorist. So this is where I became concerned. Seeing how many people actually saw my name and my position in that email and his signing of his name as a domestic terrorist, it really frightened me. So I did go to my principal. We agreed to call the police. The police came and they took a report, but they said there's nothing we can actually do about it. About 2 weeks later, that same parent sent another email to the same hundreds and hundreds of people, and he again signed it as a proud domestic terrorist. And in this email, he specifically listed the names of 3 teachers in my district, and he labeled them as promoters of CRT because of their membership in the Illinois Reading Council, which is a long-standing professional group for teachers of reading. And he was able to obtain their membership from ongoing FOIAs that he's consistently requested of the district. So as you can see, this is just a snapshot as what has become of our school board meetings. And I can only anticipate it getting worse as the discussion to remove mask mandates potentially looms in our future. I was also asked to ask how the teachers in my district are dealing with these sorts of pressures stemming from the school board meetings. And I'm actually happy that most actually don't watch or attend the school board meetings, because I honestly don't know how they would cope if they were to hear some of this disinformation being presented. I have seen more teachers in my district leave mid-year or just quit than ever before. And with these continued and ongoing disinformation campaigns taking place, I don't know how to make it better. I don't know how to comfort their fears and their worries in what's to come. I would like to say that a strategy would be to educate our parents and our board members on the science behind COVID, as well as the truth about what CRT actually is, and provide them with some more education. But I fear that these fringe parents who have taken over my school board meetings are too far gone to be able to bring them back to normalcy. All that educators right now, in my opinion, is just keep their heads up, push on, ignore this lunacy, and continue to go to work and do what's best for our students. And I thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. And I think the next two segments that we're going to have will really, I think yours has really introduced it well about how important this is, that parents and community members stand up and, you know, support teachers who are working on these issues, and should not have to fight in their after hours for the schools that our parents and community members want. And so I think that's kind of the focus of the next part. We are going to hear from Joyce Slavic of the Social Justice Alliance of Invisible Illinois. She's going to talk about what we can collectively do to push back. I think we will end up going a bit over 8:30. So apologies to our panelists. We'd love for you to stick around a little so we can ask you each another question. And we also have two parents to hear from briefly after we hear from Joyce. So Joyce, I will share my screen for your slides and hopefully not slip away from them multiple times.
Okay.
1 second.
While Cassie's pulling those up, those presentations have been really outstanding. The next section is, and I see a lot of questions about, you know, who's going to protect the teachers, who's going to save us. Guess what? It's up to us. We're the ones we're waiting for. We're the ones who are going to have to protect our teachers, protect our school boards, and protect our students. Okay. Cassie, want to move on to the next step? So everybody it's so easy to get overwhelmed. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of organization on the other side, but seriously, don't despair. There are a lot of things we can do. So this is a busy slide, but I'm going to go through these. I know we're running a little late, but I do want to run through these. I did share the link to the presentation, to our resource toolkit, which has a link to this presentation. A lot of the links all the links in the presentation are clickable, so it'll take you to different places. But so you can either do a few of these things, you can do one of these things. There's something for everybody to somehow get involved. You have to show up in one way or another. That's the way that we're going to make change. So you can contact your school board by email. You can Google your district Board of Education. You can there's going to be links to send them an email. So it has to be long. Be courteous. Don't be over emotional. Everything that gets sent to your school board can be FOIA, which means somebody can get hold of that information. So just realize that. Be professional and courteous. Attend your school board meetings. This is absolutely something that really we need people to do. If you go, you know, and I'm not recommending you go alone. Sometimes if your school board is kind of quiet, that's fine. Have somebody showing up, keeping an eye on it. School board meetings should be the most boring meetings in the world, and they are not these days. Show up and get people to go with you. Sign up to speak or show support. Google the Board of Education in your district. Find out where the public, you can usually click on a link. The agenda's often going to be online. You can figure out where the public comments fit in and what your parameters are. If you have 3 to 5 minutes, practice speaking with a mask. So when you go, you're not going to be, kind of thrown off by that. Really, really important. show up and get other people to show up and speak. You can look at most board meetings have live stream, or they're going to even be saved, so you can look at them after the fact. So you may not be able to see the whole thing or stay for the whole thing. A lot of people leave after the comments if they're early in the meeting. But realize there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens at the end of meetings. A lot of stuff where equity programs are being discussed, and you may have board members that are trying to derail it, or people supporting it. At least if you can get somebody to watch that whole thing and share that information. Recognize the groups that are showing up to your board meetings. Sometimes they may be not from your community. Know who they are. They may, are they organized? Do they have T-shirts? Do they have signs? Take pictures. At our last board meeting, we had Proud Boys show up. Take pictures so you can recognize who they are. Network after meetings. So this is really, really important. And several of the speakers have spoken about this. Coalition building, networking. You cannot do it all by yourself because it is overwhelming. We've had instances where somebody showed up, the only person speaking up against a loud group of pro-COVID anti-maskers showed up. They ended up building a coalition and had tons of people supporting. I do believe that those minority people speaking up for COVID and against masks and against equity, I believe in most communities that they're the minority, but we have to be there to show up. And notice and realize too, a lot of districts are in different places. Some districts are lucky that they have progressives on the school board, so that you're really fighting to retain that. You may be in a very conservative area, so you're going to have smaller wins, but still show up and have people show up. And in our particular school district, so FOIA requests are actually also public information. If there's a link in your agenda and your online agenda for the school board, like we have, you can see who's making FOIA requests and what they're requesting. You'll see the groups are active in your community. You'll see the individuals are active in your community. A lot of these people are just trying to be disruptive and just antagonize the board and the people, the superintendent, the people who are dealing with this. We literally, one of the FOIA requests was, for the last 18 months, I want every email where the word mask was mentioned. So this is really just harassment of the board and the administration. But we can use it to our advantage as well. Join local progressive groups. Again, coalition building is so critical. They can be specific to your school board, or they can be specific to your community. I know some people said, the school board is important, but what about bigger? Normally, if you're looking at that school board level, also, recognize that that's going to branch out into your community and beyond. Indivisible, NWSOFA, which is an indivisible branch I'm part of, your local Democrats. There are a lot of Facebook pages. And I know a lot of people complain about Facebook, but guess what? It's great for organizing. A lot of Facebook pages that are just for progressive and supporting masks or supporting progressive values in your school district, protecting equity programs. A lot of them are private. So you may have to, again, when you're building your networks, if you're going to rallies, protests, school board meetings, and you find people that you're like-minded, make a date over coffee where you're going to be able to share information and you're going to know what groups to join. And that's when you're going to feel like you're not alone. You're going to get great information. And when you need people to show up, like in our school district, when Proud Boys are going to show up, you're going to get enough people to show that they're not welcome there. Witness slips, also a great way. Look for witness slips protecting schools and education. There's a Facebook group for identifying what witness slips are. Know who your school board members are. And you can usually, if you've gone to a few school board meetings, you're going to find out what they're about. You're going to find out where they stand. You're going to find certain school board members who don't vote on anything. Well, that's really interesting, huh? You're going to find where they're putting little microaggressions and call them out. When they're putting microaggression comments during the discussion in the school board meeting, call them out during the next public comments. If you can't find medical professionals, mental health professionals, lawyers to be partners to speak at your meetings, they're often the people interviewed for newspaper articles. We had a pediatrician at one meeting who was talking about how masks damage kids' brains. Guess what? She was quoted in the newspaper. So if we can get people, professional people to speak up, that helps a lot. Letters to the editor, really, really important if you can get those out there. If you write a letter to the editor, I recommend you don't go back and look at the comments. Tell your friends that that's out there, that your partners, your coalition, and let them go out there and comment for you and support. Create a group to attend school board meetings together. One thing that's really helpful, you can wear similar colors, similar masks. We're talking about, we often wear similar colors because it's very visual support. It may not show up on a video, but the school board will see it. The teachers in attendance are going to see that. The pro-COVID anti-mask people are going to see it. The anti-equity people are going to see it. And if, when you have people that speak that you agree with, applaud. That's going to be heard on a video. It's going to show very clear support. Online petitions, they're not necessarily going to change anything, but you can use those in your comments as well. Pro-science petition, there's a link to one here, supporting masks in school, or there was one against the lawsuit against the mask mandate. Sign those petitions and talk about them. 2,500 people signed it. Find out about your school board's curriculum policies. CRT is not taught in lower education, only taught in higher education, if that. So find out what is covered. Curriculum, again, as one of the speakers talked, in our district, we have a couple of conservatives who are trying to micromanage the curriculum. That's not the school board's role to actually evaluate everything in the curriculum. It's just not. They set in overall policies and tone, but they do not micromanage. They should not be looking at every book. Find out about your district's equity or wellness program. So we actually have an equity program. We have a wellness program. They're kind of fledgling new. We now have students involved in them because students spoke up at school board meetings. But they do that, support them. Make sure that they're supported. Get their information. Coalition build with them, because when their voices are up there, we had students who've been booed at our school board meetings. It makes you want to cry, but make sure that they feel supported. It will make a difference. Run for office, so important. If you have any interest in running for office, you're even just curious about it. There's some resources on some of these upcoming slides, and you'll see those in the presentation. Talk to school board members on your school board that you align with, and talk to them about what it takes, what's important. If you're attending school board meetings, you're going to know what some of the issues are, because that's also really important. We will help you. You can drop a note in the question and answer. We'll find a way to help you if you're interested in running for office. If you're not available, you can't, or for whatever reason you're not able to, find other people, find other progressive people to run for office. Look who's speaking in the meetings. Approach those people and see if there's any interest. A lot of people maybe have thought about it, but if they're asked, they're more likely to think about it. The next school board elections are coming up in 2023. It's not too early to be thinking about that. Sign up for webinars that are of interest, even if you can't always make them. It's for the ones that I'm interested in. So it's just nice because I kind of get in there. They'll send me future meetings information, or maybe you'll get a recording link or something. There's just so many really great things out there, and you can only go to so many, right? Again, find allies at board meetings. Cannot stress this enough. You do not have to do it alone. You should not do it alone, and you probably can't do it alone. But go up to people. What you might want to do, and sometimes I'll do this, I'll just have handwritten on a couple, or have a card with your email address, your phone number, your name, and just, basically I'm for this. If they hear you speak at the school board meeting and you've heard, they'll recognize that you're an ally, and then you can touch base, even if you can't do it at the board meeting directly. FOIA requests we talked about, be a troll. Trolls are, so basically feel free, because they're doing it in our groups as well. We try to keep them out, and they're trying to keep us out. But if you have the stomach for it, go into Awake Illinois or one of those groups and see what they're up to. See what kind of disruptions they're looking to do. They have a big anti-mask protest that they're trying to push in the beginning of February. Find out about that so we can share that and be prepared for it, and we can tell our school boards what we're hearing. Share, collaborate, network. Can't say it enough. And vote. School boards, local elections, midterms. They're decided by a pretty small minority. It is critical that we get out and vote. Right now, during petition season, help school board members and anybody local. Make sure you help them get on the ballot by getting petitions for them, and then support them. Get them connected with your different groups, and do what you can to support them personally. It makes a huge difference. And these next few slides, we'll just go through them quickly. Some of the messaging, be inclusive, absolutely critical. We should all want an honest and accurate education for our children. All children benefit from our equity program. So there's some other things, reclaim freedom and choice. Jim mentioned that. They don't get to, claim freedom and choice only for themselves. It's really important. Repeat, make sure that you have multiple speakers and public comments repeating things. Say what we're for, not just speaking against them. Use active voice. Don't amplify the opposition. Really try not to speak about CRT. I mean, let's talk about pro-equity and positive things. It's important about the kids. Call them out when they're lying. When they're lying about masks, or if a school board member's lying, call them out. History and sex ed is taught based on age-appropriate information. Recent acts were passed this past summer so that sex education is taught at an appropriate level. They like to call it pornography. It's not. That act is very, very simple. Sex ed's probably already being taught there. It's just bringing up standards to that. And note in a lot of in the Sex Ed Act, it's promoting talking about race. It's talking about LGBTQ rights. These are things that the right wing and the conservatives really hate. They don't want that out there. And those are things that are really important in this act. So we want to make sure that's not getting silenced. Okay, next slide. So this will just be in the presentation. You can go ahead, and I got some additional links here that we'll add for the next time that I saw from our presenters, but just some outstanding information, some public comment samples. Use existing samples and modify it to your needs. You can use these very simple or as they are to email your board. Again, focus on honest, accurate education. Those are really our keywords. Run for office. These are some links and some guides to running for office. Again, there's some links here. Talk to local progressive groups. They will support you, and talk to board members who you're aligned with. They'll also support you. These would be some more resources, and you're the one we're waiting for. It's not up to somebody else. We all have to step up. That's really what it's about. And again, the link to this toolkit is in the chat, and that also has a link to this presentation.
Thank you, Joyce. As Joyce said, a lot of this will be shared for future reference for people. We're going to hear briefly from two parents. Apologies to people watching from home and our panelists that we're running over. Panelists, if you do need to go, we totally understand. If you stick around, we will have some questions. But first, we'll quickly hear from two parents, really to, I think, give people hope on the ground that they can, and inspiration, that they can do some organizing and do some organized pushback. So first, Kylie Spahn is a parent and public school activist who's passionate about protecting student rights, bringing equality to all public schools, and advocating for the best practices in the classroom while fighting the abuse and misuse of standardized testing. She's been fighting back against book banning attempts at her daughter's district in Downers Grove most recently. Kylie, if you want to go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. As Cassie said, I'm a parent of a high school student in Downers Grove. Over the last 12 months, we have seen our school board meetings going from incredibly dull and boring events to making national news. The most recent one being in last November, when we had members of the racist, neo-Nazi, fascist group called the Proud Boys attend our board meeting with the intent to intimidate our school board members and the community. They were invited to the meeting by a member of a local far-right group who was attempting to ban the book Genderqueer in our high school libraries. There were almost 200 people in attendance at that meeting. The majority were there to support our librarians, our teachers, the school board, and our LGBTQ students. Approximately 1/3 of the attendees were aligned with the extremist groups Awake Illinois and the Proud Boys. So how did we rally so much support? Honestly, it was a group effort. A small group of residents of both former and current students banded together to stand up for our rights and to support the LGBTQ students. And a group of students also banded together and took action as well. We share the common value that we want inclusion and diversity in our community. Downers Grove has grown from an ultra-conservative town to an increasingly diversified and welcoming community. For the first time ever, our village celebrated Pride Month last year, and it was heartwarming and wonderful to see how the community came out in full support. My group of community members, we could not sit out this one. We had been pushing back against the anti-maskers and the critical race theory screamers for several months. We were well aware that the next thing on their list would be to attack a marginalized group of students in our schools in a homophobic motivated campaign to ban books they deemed pornography. This is a national movement and is happening right across the country. We knew it was coming. My group used social media to track the hateful rhetoric coming from members of Awake Illinois, Wake Up D99, and the Proud Boys. We embarked on a truth campaign, bringing to light how divisive and destructive the hate speech was to LGBTQ students in our community. The American Librarians Association was a great resource in connecting me with a committee member who walked me through the process of book challenges, what questions to ask from our school district, and ideas on how to rally the community. I also reached out to a youth leader of an LGBTQ teen organization in our village who helped me to highlight why banning LGBTQ books would further marginalize and alienate minorities. We had meetings via Zoom to organize who would speak at the board meetings, and we discussed what points each speaker would make. We pushed back and we continue to push back. So what can you do in your community? It starts with 2 or 3 or 4 people. Have a conversation, set up a Zoom meeting. If you can meet in person, meet in person. Keep those meetings off social media. Honestly, it just creates more fodder for the hate noise out there. Nominate 2 or 3 speakers for the next board meeting. Be respectful in your approach. Try and reclaim the conversation and stick to the issues that are actually real issues facing your district. Finally, just be brave, be courageous, be strong. You've got people out there that are willing to help and support you, like Illinois Families for Public Schools. Join Facebook groups of like-minded parents, and we can, it may seem like your efforts don't count at the moment, but your small efforts really do count. And together as a group, we can really bring change for the good of all. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Kylie. Next we have Jessica Jacob. She's also a public school parent. She has a child at Algonquin District CUSD 300, where she's a member of the Parent Advisory Council, and she's been deeply involved in education issues in her community and has organized parents around anti-racism work, school board elections, and has also been mobilizing parents to attend board meetings to show support during these recent contentious times, and has really been instrumental in organizing parents to support mask requirements, both in Algonquin and beyond. So Jessica, go ahead.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay,
Can you hear me? Awesome. Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys, and good evening. And thank you for all the work you're doing to protect our education system as well as our students. Like everyone else, we have experienced the same challenges within our district, so I will save you those specific stories. And I will get straight to the point with all the helpful, good information in an effort to keep this short so we can get on with our evening. So I work with a group of parents in our community who are all passionate about supporting and defending our school district staff and board. I really wish I could tell you about some exciting story on how we got our group together to develop this solid strategic approach to surmount these challenges, but we didn't, right? This just kind of happened organically. So one of the moms in our group has a discussion group for our school district on Facebook, has about 7,000 members in that group. As you can imagine, there's some pretty serious discussions going on in that group and a lot being discussed these days. But that makes it easy for us to be part of those conversations and see what's going on, right? So that's been super helpful. During our last school board election, I quickly learned how uninformed our community was regarding the election process, as well as details about the candidates. So I started an election group on Facebook to create a safe place to be able to share facts about these candidates, as well as inform people about the election process itself. The good news is we invited some candidates to join, all of the candidates to join. And not only did they join, but they participated, all of them but one. We collected questions from the group members for the candidates, selected a handful of the questions, and then allowed the candidates about a week to respond within the group. So we did this through election night and then reported the results from election night, and then archived the group until the next election. What we'll probably do is also use this group to vet people for our next board election as well. Another mom started a Facebook group, as Joyce had mentioned, for people in the community who support the board to encourage each other. We talk about how we show our support during the board meetings, as well as other areas. When we heard about the infamous DeVore lawsuit, we decided to create a petition to give people a voice, letting everyone know we do not agree with the lawsuit. And more importantly, we stand by our board and their efforts to keep our kids in school safe. It garnered about 2,000 signatures in a week. So we blasted it all over social media. So nice to hear that there are so many people who are concerned. Lastly, we're launching another group on Valentine's Day across all social media platforms that will include podcasts. We will be focusing on informing our community about topics such as local, state, and national politics, local school district, mental health and community assistance and resources, etc. So overall, what we basically learned is during this challenging time, people want to be informed, they want to get involved and or a voice to be heard, but not everyone has the same capacity to do so. So our goal has been to just try to give them easy access to the information, options, and resources they desire. So far, we feel like it's been working. We hope the community feels the same way. And that's all I have. Feel free to find me on Facebook. I'm sure we'll be able to share contact information, but if I can help anybody out in any way, I'd be glad to help. Again, thanks for having me and have a great evening.
Thank you, Jessica and Kylie. It's, I think, especially helpful for people to know that it is possible to do this work, and just regular parents are doing it, and you don't have to have a grand plan before you start, but you can really build some impressive stuff, especially as Jessica was just describing there. So we want to wrap up. I think we want to ask both the senator and Mr. Rouse a question quick. Both of you really covered a lot, I think, of what we'd wanted to hear from on tonight. So for Senator Passionacius, you really talked about your experience on the State Board of Ed and the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards. And I was wondering if you had anything to leave people with in terms of working with our state legislators and beyond just the state board, what the General Assembly can do to support local school boards. So she is gone. So we, let's see if Nate is still here. I think Nate is, oh, great. Mr. Rouse, our question that we had for you, I think is that, like, you're talking about these periods of retreat and that we're sort of in that now. And really, how how best to move through these retreat phases, and especially in terms, as this is a statewide program tonight, do you have a sense of how much of this work is going on around Illinois, and if you're able to connect to other districts and other people in your position doing DEI work and trying to lead DEI work, how that can be expanded?
Sure. First, slow and steady wins the race. As we know, I always talk about professional development. Using analogies and the power of storytelling is always important. But when we start, prepping to run a marathon, you better do some practice first, right? You better have some running. If you want to be, if you're a weightlifter, you're gonna lift some smaller weights before you start getting and tackling the bigger issues. And so, one foot in front of the other, steps at the time. Taking incremental steps at a time is helpful. That being said, for myself, unfortunately, because the role is relatively new, there wasn't a group per se, and so we started our own. I actually am part of a national consortium of equity directors that probably has about 16 or 18 of us in the Northwest suburbs. We get together monthly and talk about issues that we have and work together in trying to systematize this work. That being said, I think that people are exhausted. I think that unfortunately, again, there was this huge wave that we had of hope, and we're just kind of seeing some of that, frankly, crumble in front of us, especially with a lot of the things that are happening, with the government and the things that we're seeing in social media and the things that are happening with our school boards. And so, mental health, taking care of yourself is important in these roles. I think as we continue to do this work, I think it's also important to remind us, as a person of color, the burden is heavy. I think it's really, really important, as many of us I've heard people talk about, is stepping up and making sure that people are allies and co-conspirators in this work. And you spend time around people that are like-minded, where you're able to kind of process together. I can't underestimate the power and the importance of me having a support network that is there, that's in the field doing the work, that I can really lean on and rely on in times where things are hard. And so I say that to say there are many districts that are certainly trying to do the work, but at the same time, those of you in Illinois have probably just heard this week on some of the difficulties that are taking place in Hinsdale District 86, where they went through the rigorous process, their equity team of selecting an actual professional development consultant to come and lead their diversity work. And unfortunately, that consultant, once she was named and once that was going to vote in their community, was hit with so many visceral responses and attacks on her social media that she graciously declined. She named it as a privilege to be able to decline working with that district, and at the same time said that her safety is paramount. And based upon some of the things that were written to her and about her and the questions, she didn't feel safe in that community. And I know people in that community, and I know that that's not going to stop the work, but that's just an example again of the tactics and what happens when we're not careful and we're not prepared to provide counter narratives in board meetings and at board discussions when we do have people that unfortunately have a difference of opinion. It's very okay for people to have those opinions, but what I think I'm seeing, and as we were talking and in our groups, is that unfortunately, because of the how some of the challenges have been being expressed with this frustration, people are frankly afraid. People are scared sometimes to come to board meetings. And this is a time where we've got to move through that fear on behalf of our children, on behalf of this work, to talk about how important it is, and reminding our board members, whether it's letter campaigns that you do, but they need to see you so that they can also stand in the decisions that they make to support the work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rouse. I think that's kind of like a very good summary of what we wanted people to take away from tonight. So we really appreciate that. And let's see if I can, there, I'm back again. So thank you so much to all of our panelists, Jennifer Berkshire, Senator Passionacius, Nathaniel Rouse, Julie Harris, and to our parents, bringing up their personal experiences organizing. And I hope people really take this away, that this is possible. We need to get organized. You need to form coalitions. You have to do the work, but you can have success in it. And so thank you to Kylie Spahn and Jessica Jacob for bringing that perspective. Big thank you to Mcgrath and Joyce Slavic for their presentations. They have been doing sharing a lot of that information in a much broader and more detailed way on the third Saturday of every month. So you can, we will send out information about how to join those discussions. And once again, thank you to so many of our co-sponsoring orgs, and in our sharing information afterwards, we will be sending you links to all of them so you can connect. Those are another place to connect if you are working on this on local levels. A lot of them are in particular counties and cities. And so that's another place to find connections. And thanks so much for our partner org, Indivisible Illinois. And once again, I'm with Illinois Families for Public Schools. Please stay in touch and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks.
Well, we made it. 2 hours. Congratulations for everyone who was here the whole time. Now, there is a lot to unpack from that meeting. A couple notes like off the top of my head. Number one, what you guys need to understand is that those people, those idiots that we just watched for 2 hours, they are winning. They are in the power position. Did you guys catch the part where they were talking about Illinois putting an equity thing on report cards? We need to look into that. We need to look into that. We need to make a note. What the hell is Illinois doing with putting equity on report cards? Did you also hear that black guy, their token black guy, was talking about how he has a national group of equity directors that he colludes with? That was crazy. But no, these people are winning, guys. They're winning. But what was scary to me watching this webinar is they truly believe that they are losing. Now, that's actually good. That shows the power of what's been done in the last year. They talked about how 30% of the students in America are now covered by anti-CRT bills. Now, we know that not all those anti-CRT bills are effective. Like the one in New Hampshire does not prevent the teaching of critical race theory. If Keith Ammon is still watching, you guys got to go back and fix that. And they know that. But you know what? That is a major victory that so many students are now protected by these bills, at least somewhat, right? But, just because we've had these victories does not mean that we are truly winning the culture war. We're like 40 years behind them, man. And we need to keep reminding ourselves of that because it's sometimes like it's great to have victories and we should celebrate that. And we need to have those awesome moments where we're all coming together, but never ever forget that just because we have one victory, just because there's one election win does not mean we're winning. They have been taking over every major institution in this country for 40 years. We need to keep pushing, never let up pressure. But the fact that they think they're losing is what makes them so dangerous. The fact that they truly believe that they are losing makes them so dangerous. That makes people desperate. When they think they're losing, when they think they have nothing else to lose, that's when people become desperate and crazy, and that's when the fun really begins. So that was something that stood out to me. Another thing that stood out to me was these people hate FOIA requests. They hate FOIA requests. Well, do I have the thing for them? That means that we all need to get better at writing FOIA requests, every single one of us. So what I want you guys to do, if you want to learn how to write a FOIA request or a public records request, is I want you right now to go to activelyunwoke.com. I will put the link in the chat. activelyunwoke.com. It's also actually linked right in the chat or at the pinned comment. And I want you to go to this live events page. And what you're going to find on the live events page is this webinar with Nicole Solis on February 11th. That's coming up in a couple weeks. I want every single person watching this stream right now and anyone who watches it in the future to go and register for this webinar with Nicole Solis. This is a completely free event. Nicole Solis is a mom in Rhode Island who wrote so many public records requests that the teachers unions actually sued her to prevent her from seeing what they were teaching in her daughter's schools. She is also a lawyer, and she is going to come and teach everyone how to write public records requests, what words to use, where to look for their stuff. She knows all the tips and tricks. All right, so I don't want a single excuse. Every single person needs to be registered for that webinar on February 11th. There's no excuses, no cost. It's free, but space is limited. This webinar is just under 40% filled right now. So there's still plenty of room. There's plenty of room for everyone, but I want to make sure you guys register, get signed up, come learn. It will be recorded. But the reason I'm doing it in webinar format is that I want to keep it a private community so people can't get like in trouble for going to the webinar. You guys can ask questions, stuff like that. I have a whole bunch of other webinars on the site as well. I've got one that's coming up next week from me, Understanding the Basics of Critical Race Theory. These people thought that we couldn't define critical race theory. I'll give you 2 definitions of critical race theory right now. I'll give you James Lindsay's definition first because it's shorter. James Lindsay says that critical race theory is the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society. My definition of critical race theory is a little bit longer. It is that critical race theory is an ideology that was started in academia in the 1970s that teaches that racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction, and that the job of the critical race theorist is to expose how, not if, how racism occurs in every circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred. See, I can do 2 definitions of critical race theory off the top of my head. I don't need no dictionary.com or encyclopedia. I bet no one in that thing this tonight that we watched could do what I just did there. Emphasize, and thank you guys for all the super chats that were displayed on the screen throughout the stream. I definitely appreciate the support. Thank you for that. A veiled threat is a threat, correct? Well, a threat, here's my perspective on that. A threat of a thing is not the same as the thing itself. I do think that we need to play psychological warfare with these people. I want them afraid of going to every single school board meeting. I want these people afraid to go to school board meetings. Not that we're ever going to commit violence, because we never commit violence. We never do that. Don't commit any violence. Don't steal people's stuff. Don't destroy people's stuff. Those are the 3 pretty basic rules, guys. But a threat of a thing is not the same as the thing itself. So if I have to go to a school board meeting and yell, "We know where you live," so that they don't feel so good about what they're doing and maybe resign from the damn school board, I am perfectly happy to do that. Do I know where they live? No, probably haven't wasted my time looking it up, but could I, because they're publicly elected officials? Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely. If we are not playing the psychological warfare game, I don't know what we're doing. Do you want to win or don't you? Tom J says, I can be your lifelong Black Dem from NYC to break their brain if anyone needs. I will be making some FOIA requests myself. Thank you for your service, Tom J. We appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, that is all that I have for tonight. Now, as a reminder, tomorrow I will be doing happy hour on my second channel. I know this kind of felt like happy hour for a lot of people, but it was in fact not. It just happened to work out this way. Actually, before I do this, guys, just so you know, I would love to do more Spy Stream. Did everyone enjoy Spy Stream tonight? I want to do more of these. So how we can all help out, and I'm going to build, so what my vision is I want to have a calendar on activelyunwoke.com of all these woke progressive webinars that they do completely in public, but I'm going to need your help in terms of finding them. So if you know of a woke progressive webinar that we can use for Spy Stream, what I want you to do is I want you to go to activelyunwoke.com. I want you to go up here to this big black contact button, and I want you to fill out this here form and send me the link. And we will create a calendar of Spy Stream. We could do this all the time. There's so many of these webinars, it's ridiculous. But I want to do a calendar of Spy Stream. I can also make it so you guys can have access to Spy Stream, so you can sign up directly. You know what's really fun when you do spying like this? I used to do this all the time. You go into their chat if they have the live chat, and you just ask subversive questions. Like one time I was in like a teacher education webinar, and they had the chat live, and I just asked. I was like, "Didn't a school get sued for this in Nevada?" And like, you should have seen the chaos erupt in the web. They're like, no one got sued for that. I was like, I'm pretty sure a school just got sued for teaching what you guys are telling them to teach. So we all got to be in this together, guys. I can't find every woke webinar myself. So if you know of a woke webinar or training that is being conducted in public, let me know about it on activelyunwoke.com. This goes right to me, and we will do Spy Stream. I will do Spy Stream every day if I have a webinar to stream. Then we can have a good old time with that. But I was just saying we are doing happy hour tomorrow. Now, usually I do happy hour at 5 p.m. on my channels, but tomorrow's a little bit different because the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire convention, the state convention, is this weekend, and there's a little get together tomorrow at 5 that I want to go to. We ain't scared of no stinking snowstorm, unlike the GOP. Our convention's not getting canceled. We live in New Hampshire, for crying out loud. So, in order to accommodate me going and drinking beer with the Libertarians, I am going to be doing happy hour starting at 2 p.m. I know it's really early for happy hour. If you're in California, maybe you have a mimosa. So it's like, or a Bloody Mary, a morning alcoholic drink. But 2 p.m. tomorrow on Actively Unwoke, we are going to be watching this video that literally just got uploaded to YouTube today. It is from the Diversity and Equity offices at the Philadelphia Public Schools, and it is a video all about how the Philadelphia Public Schools are integrating equity into their curriculum. But of course, critical race theory is not taught in K through 12 schools. Why should we think such a thing? Why should we think such a thing? So that's going to be at 2 p.m. tomorrow on my second channel, not on my main one that we're watching now, my second one, which is youtube.com/activelyunwoke. You can go and subscribe to it and find happy hour there for 2 p.m. tomorrow. Am I going to CPAC this year? No, unfortunately, I'm not going to CPAC this year. That's not a thing against CPAC. That just has to do with me being like way too effing busy. And it wasn't that I didn't want to. I thought about it. I just don't have the bandwidth. So sorry, I'm going to be missing CPAC this year. I do hope everyone has a great time at CPAC this year. All right, guys, one final reminder that, if you haven't done so yet, listen, Spy Stream is just one of the many things that we can do to fight back against woke nonsense and chaos. And we're going to do it, and we're going to do lots of other amazing things. So if you want to join my unwoke army, the only real unwoke army that exists, first thing you need to do is pre-order my book. Now, if you want to wait for the Kindle version to come, because it's only available for hardcover pre-order right now, that's fine. Kindle version should be out next week. I also have been getting questions about autographed copies of the book. That's going to be coming too. We're working that out with the publisher. But right now, you can pre-order my book that is coming out in April. It's called Actively Unwoke, like everything else. And it is filled with case studies and specific actionable things that you can do to fight back. And on this website, we're going to be building out a whole knowledge base of things people can do to fight back. So every time someone asks, like, Carlin, what can I actually do? I'm just like a mom with kids and I have a job and I don't have that much time. What can I do? Guess what we're going to be building out? We're going to be building out a place of helpful suggestions and tips that you can go on and say, oh, I want to fight back in my schools. Here are 15 things I can do today. That's what we're going to be doing on activelyunwoke.com. And the first place that is going to help do that, oh no, I don't have it up anymore. Oh wait, no, I do. So next week, guys, I'm going to be launching the application to join my Unwoke Army. There needs to be an application because I only want serious people joining. And the first people that are going to get access to this application are my locals supporters. Now, I love all my locals members and I love all my viewers and subscribers, but my local supporters give me the ability to do things like Spy Stream. They give me the ability to spend all day looking at woke stuff, pulling my hair out, driving myself insane, and I greatly appreciate them for it. If you want to become one of my local supporters and get early access to the Unwoke Army application that will be coming out next week to help come together as a group and plan different strategies and do different subversive things, you can head over to kb.locals.com/support. You can get it for $5 a month, less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You can get it for $50 a year, which saves you 2 months. Or you can make a one-time gift. You can also download the Locals app and get some coins and join that way. But whichever way you join, guys, come and check out my Locals community. Even if you need to sign up for free, you can sign up for free at kb.locals.com, get a sense of what it's all about. But if you want to unlock all the features of Locals and get access to the 2 Zoom calls I do every week with my community, and get access to our book club, and get access to our Bitchcraft, and get access to all the other things that we're going to be doing as a community. And of course, get early access to be part of the unwoke army that I'm building of people who will be working directly with me to brainstorm and crowdsource sick unwoke activities. We're basically like the bad news bears. You're going to want to become a supporter on the platform, and I really do appreciate it. Martin O'Keefe said, from the other side of the planet, most of what they are saying has been debunked. Some of the segregation stuff is going through court. Proud Boys, white supremacists with a black leader. Yeah, there was a lot of nonsense in that presentation tonight. So much incredible. I really liked hearing that Chris Rufo invented critical race theory. Did you guys catch that right off the top? They're like, Chris Rufo created critical race theory. I was like, all right. It's going to be one of those webinars. All right, guys, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for sticking with me. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to go hang out with the husband. But I will see you tomorrow on my second channel for happy hour at 2 p.m. Take care, guys. Have a great rest of your evening.